now to weigh in on it all. Benjamin Tall, Deputy Chief Economist at CIBC. And Benjamin, let's start with the wage subsidy. Some people will be, can be forgiven. Right before a weekend, they come out with a big sort of, I want to call it an overhaul, but it's more than a tinkering of this, what they hope is going to be sort of the signature plan of the economic recovery. Is the plan as they laid it right now making sense to you? Will it be enough?
That's a good question, because so far it hasn't been great. Let's admit it. It's underutilized big time relative to CERB. And I think that what they are trying to do now is to get people moving from CERB to the wage subsidy program. And listen, what they are doing now is better than before because it's more flexible, but it's still a very complex program. You still have to prove that your income is down, and how do you measure it? And then there is another issue that more and more business people are talking about, and is the possibility of the government going after them later, when the sky is blue, and people will start actually being investigated by the government to what extent their revenue really went down by X%. And many small businesses really don't want that. So that's another issue that is limiting the attractiveness of this program at this point.
Okay, so that's an important one too. When I saw the way they had laid out, and they did change it up in terms of some companies hardest hit in terms of their revenue will actually get a top up, get more money than was promised before. Then there'll be the sliding scale. Struck me as a little complicated though, and I thought, you know what, I was never a great math student. Maybe this is just going over my head. The accounting department of the company will figure it out. But the CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, said the same thing. This is pretty complicated. Do they need to sort of streamline it a little bit more?
Yes, it is complicated. It has been complicated before, and now it is more complicated. I totally understand what they're trying to do. It makes sense if you think about it. Keeping the employer-employee relationship is key to this kind of recovery. At the same time, again, if you really read the fine print, it's a very complicated program. And the government is telling you, listen, if you're going to cheat, we will be after you. So they're going to hire many people to audit all those cases. And I think that many small businesses don't want the government looking at their books. So maybe that's one of the reasons why they're not so eager to participate, maybe.
All right, we're starting to get a little bit of color out of Ontario right now. Apparently, we're going to have 7 regions of the province moving to the next stage. Not sure yet. I'm trying to read the little red banners that are going across the screen there as I'm doing other things. But Toronto is the economic engine, not only of the province, but of the country. Is there going to be that much lost if Toronto is not? Toronto is not cleared. I'm seeing right now, Toronto, Peel, and Windsor not cleared to enter stage 3 reopening. So is this a bit of a setback for the economic recovery, considering how important Toronto is to the province?
Yeah, first of all, no surprise whatsoever. It was expected that Toronto will not be part of it, and Peel as well. And the reason is not because of the fact that you have more cases. It's simply because of the fact that they need more data. They need 1 more week of data to make this declaration that Toronto can join. So I'm guessing next week, if we talk, you will see Toronto part of the list. I think it's just a question of more data available for the Ministry of Health. Absolutely, you need Toronto. That's the engine of Ontario. But I think we have to be careful here. The fact that you open up does not mean that people will go to restaurants. Because remember, stage 3 means restaurants indoor. It means increase the number of gathering indoor, gym, stuff like that. So it can be potentially significant in terms of the operation. But at the same time, if you look at different states in the US, if you look at different regions in Canada that open and didn't open, the difference between stage 2 and stage 3, in terms of the overall impact on the economy, is not going to be huge because people will still be very, very careful going to an indoor restaurant even now.
And this is the real key, right? I mean, we know that it's almost like 2 sides of the same coin. As we get the reopenings, then restaurants, other businesses will hopefully avail themselves of the wage subsidy to bring their workers back. But ultimately, when it comes down to the economy, I mean, my spending and your spending is someone else's salary in the long run. So I guess that's, as you're saying, that's the big hurdle, right? Will we start to show up again the way we used to and fuel the economy?
And the short answer is I don't think so. If you look at the states, if you look at different states over there that open and close at different times, and you can see that it's really the fear factor that is dominating as opposed to the availability of services. And I suggest that will be the case also in Toronto when we reach state 3 in the rest of the province. Clearly, people are not ready to start shopping and dining and partying the way we used to, especially given what we see in the US. So I think we should not overestimate the economic multiplier of opening up at this point.
Now, when it comes to that, then, we know from the fiscal update, only a couple of weeks behind us, that we're spending a lot of money, either on the emergency response benefit, what they hope they can spend on the wage subsidy, and of course, although they've extended things, there's supposed to be an end date. Is it even reasonable right now for us to be talking about end dates for these government support programs, considering how hard of a clawback it's going to be for this economy?
The short answer is absolutely no. There's not going to be an end there. There's not going to be a cliff. Simply, we cannot afford that. This crisis is going to be with us for a while. As I suggested, opening up does not mean that the economy will be booming. It will be better, but it will not be great. We still have an unemployment rate of about 8-9% that we have to deal with. This is a very significant issue that governments will have to take care of, and therefore they cannot afford just ending that. That's why the motivation now and the plan is to transfer people from CERB to the wage subsidy, but it's very, very difficult to do given the complexity of the wage subsidy program.
I think complexity is an important point, as you've spoken as well, because in the beginning, I don't think anyone faulted the government for moving quickly, right? Particularly on the emergency response benefit, for getting the money out there, because these are usually programs that take years to develop. As they morph into something else, do we have to start worrying that perhaps we're not giving the attention to detail as we go further and further down these paths?
Absolutely, and that's why I think that the next step of this development will be really fine-tuning those programs, making sure that they make sense and they actually allow people to really utilize labor force in a more optimal way. And I think that's the direction we are going. We have to remember that many of those programs were designed so quickly. They are full of holes. Everybody knows that. And clearly there is a lot of room for abuse. If you look at what's happening in the PPP, namely, the Paycheck Protection Program in the US, and you look at companies, you see that many of them that got this loan got it without really needing to change their labor force, and therefore for them it was free money. I think we see the same to an extent in Canada, in the CERB, and in a wage subsidy. We have to fix it. We have to make sure that those programs are paying money to people who need it, not otherwise. And that's why I think that the fear of auditing is very important here.
Benjamin, it's always great to get your insight on these matters. Thanks for joining us.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Benjamin Tiles, Deputy Chief Economist at CIBC. We're going to take a little